today I'm being joined by Richard Hunt. Thank you, Richard, for joining me and going over everything SAP. So, before we get started, could you give our audience a bit of background on yourself?
Thanks for having me firstly, Max. My name's Richard Hunt. I'm a Managing Director, CEO of Turnkey Consulting. So we're a global security and controls company. I've been focused in this area since I joined PwC as a graduate 25 years ago, something like that.
Right.
I've been helping companies to secure their SAP systems and more recently their IT landscapes for over 25 years now.
So I did check out your profile and you've done SAP for pretty much everyone. So if someone knows it, I think you're the guy to talk to. And it's interesting how you've been in this industry and focusing on this for so long. So just give me an overview of how you've seen things change over those 25 years.
So when I first started in my career, a lot of companies treated security as a very sort of small part of a project. They often did it at the very back end of a project. And to be honest, what used to happen a lot of the time is that the SAP environment would be secured in a silo from the rest of the IT landscape. I think over time, we've seen sort of cloud solutions evolved. We've seen companies take a more hybrid approach to their IT landscape. The connectivity of those systems is enhanced significantly as well. And I think it's kind of, at the same time, you've seen the threat landscape change and evolve. A lot more cyber risks, a lot of companies taking those types of topics a lot more seriously these days. And I think the need to approach securing your SAP environment in a more end-to-end way and also in a way that's consistent with the way that the rest of the IT landscape is secured has become really important. So securing it in a silo with your SAP team is no longer an option, really. You need to look at this in the context of how you're securing the rest of your IT landscape and embrace the CISO's agenda on this topic and really kind of bring SAP in as another application at the same time as looking at those kind of cloud topics, etc. as well.
Okay, excellent. So let's take that a little bit further then. When we're talking about this SAP security, which obviously organizations are aware of, but might not be at the main forefront of their mind. So what does effective SAP security look like from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a big topic, right?
Give me the snippet, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the key thing is to consider this in an end-to-end way. So we've been professing at Turnkey for some time now that it's not good enough to secure just the roles and authorizations within an SAP environment. You need to look at the end-to-end challenge around securing your SAP application. So that includes roles and authorizations, as it always has done. But you also need to look at how you secure your SAP environment from external threats, how you're provisioning access to users in the system and making sure that you're provisioning and importantly deprovisioning access from those users. And that involves linking up to business processes around HR, etc., so that you know when joiners are happening, when leavers are happening, etc. And at the same time, there's the privileged access side of things as well. So for a long time, we've had emergency access options within the SAP environment, but the database layer's been ignored in a lot of cases. So more traditional sort of privileged access management solutions are an important part of that as well. So managing both the database layer and where people need elevated privileges to manage database challenges at the same time as within the application itself and higher privileges within the application. So it's very much a kind of end-to-end approach. And then on top of that, you've got to look at the whole kind of detect and respond aspects of things as well. So how are you actually identifying issues when they're occurring and responding to those too? So I think what we're advising our clients to do is to really go back to the principles that they're applying across the rest of their IT landscape, in particular the NIST framework, and looking at that NIST framework in an SAP context is really important to try and look at things in a much more end-to-end way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. You can't just take one area. You need to look at the whole journey that it's going on and really be effective when you're kind of doing that journey, make sure nothing's getting through. And in order to kind of take that further, obviously there's so many different versions of cyber attacks out there. Long-time viewers of EM360 will know we've pretty much covered all of them at this point. But when we're talking about SAP, how do you effectively kind of identify and manage those cyber threats that are coming towards your SAP surface, and how do you do it quick enough that you don't see mass damage happening?
Yeah, so I think you've kind of got various different layers here. So, you know, the network perimeter defenses that you've got in place are an important part of that. If you think of it as a kind of castle, the network perimeter defenses are the outer walls, and they've always been important, but it's also important to recognise that they will get breached, and once they are, you need to have the keep in place as well in order to protect your crown jewels within, you know, and the assets that you've got in your organisation. So I think deploying some of the products that are specialising in defending your SAP environment or your key business applications such as Anapsys, etc., is an important part of protecting those applications. You know, so we've kind of been working with companies to not specifically look at product first, as it were. I think the important thing is look at what you're doing at the moment, what applications you have to protect your IT landscape, and where the gaps might be specifically to SAP, you know, because there are options now to look at zero-day protection for SAP, for example, and there are companies researching and identifying new threats to the SAP environment, and it's really important to consider that aspect of things as well, and whether you're in a business model and your threats as an organisation are sufficient that you need to give very specific attention to the SAP threats.
Yeah, definitely. And a big part of that is obviously knowing what you have, what it's doing, and when it's doing it. So to wrap up, talk to me about the audit requirements that you really need to be seeing in an organization to stay on top of all of this, and really the benefits that people should be looking at by having this approach.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When it comes to audit requirements, a lot of companies see that as the benchmark of what they need to do to secure their SAP environments, and it really isn't. It's an audit is there to identify or to gain some confidence for shareholders over whether your financial accounts are a true and accurate representation of the actual financial numbers, and audit firms do undertake audits with that concept in mind, and they look at controls-based audits, and that's where they will start to pay some attention to how you've secured your SAP environment, etc. But they'll primarily look at things like segregation of duties, some basic IT general controls, etc. Things like the new UK SOX that's coming in, or Sarbanes-Oxley in the US, JSOX, those things raise the bar a little bit and put some regulatory obligations over the same sorts of principles. Yeah. But even then, they're not really going as far as you need to go to actually properly secure your SAP environment. So it's really important to not confuse the requirements of an audit with whether or not you're secured or not. You can easily have a very clean audit and not have a fully secured SAP environment. And how much further beyond your audit requirements you will need to go will be dependent on your threat landscape, the types of threat actors that are out there for your for your organisation, etc. But every organisation pretty much has a lot more to do than just the basics of what your audit is asking you to do. Exactly. Code scanning, for example, is standard within all of the from a requirement perspective across other applications, but within SAP, a lot of companies don't scan their code to see if they're introducing new vulnerabilities. That's not an audit requirement. No. You know?
Yeah. This is what we always say. There's no one-size-fits-all for cybersecurity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have anything to talk about, and you wouldn't have anything to kind of defend against. So I think that's fantastic advice for people to take forward, of understanding what they have, especially if they're SAP users. So, Richard, thank you very much for talking to me and giving your insights today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Richard.